dark of the night. I'm playing Pac-Man, it's my second life. The joystick's in my hand, I'm unstoppable. High score secrets, I've got them all unlocked. Memories rush back like a time machine. Take me back to the arcade, where I spent my younger days. And the black lights glowing on a pocket full of tokens. And groove to the beat.
Hello and welcome to the Premium AI Strategy Accelerator, the ultimate program for schools, colleges and universities and businesses that want to lead in the AI revolution. Before you apply, let me tell you how this program works. Who is this program for? We focus on helping a hand-picked team of 6 to 10 change makers in your organization. And this elite innovation squad will become your internal startup, pioneering AI-driven solutions that define your organization's future.
This generation with the faded acid cheese. Take me back to the arcade.
Well, hello and welcome back to my stream too for a very special session with somebody I'm a new fangirl of. I'm so excited for you to get to know him better too. But before we begin, I just want to thank Swivel again for being our main sponsor for the whole conference. And they honestly have made it made them able to run this, or made Amanda be able to run this whole thing, which is such a beautiful thing for educators. And also to Brisk for these awesome t-shirts. And they have a really cool, I'm not going to stand up, but the really cool QR code on the back that has all the replays on it. And if you get a shirt and you're at ISTE, there's parties you can get into with the EduGuardians and all kinds of cool stuff going on. So thank you, Brisk. And thank you to Almanac for our daily sponsor, forgot that word, our daily sponsor of Almanac, and go back and watch that session. I'm psyched to use it with my slides tomorrow. Also, one little reminder is to join our Week of AI map. And with this map, you can show us where you are in the world. And I want to make sure I share the right screen. Where you are in the world by bit.ly/Week of AI map. You just click on this cute little purple button or use this QR code to join the map, and then we can see where you are. And we have people from everywhere. It's so cool. But my hope for this map was to have you connect to people and get to know them. So under mine here, I told a little bit about myself, and I actually put a link in. So you can use links, you can use video, you can do snapshots, do a selfie if you want. You can also click on this little thing here and comment and get to know people. So definitely take advantage of that map because it's a great way to get to know people. Also, if you show up as anonymous, make sure that you sign into Padlet first, and that will switch for you to your name. Okay, so enough about that. Let me bring up the man, the legend, the, the wonderful person we have here today. Here we go. Here he goes. The AA Ron Marber. I said it wrong.
You're good. It's all good.
Say it. I mean, like
it's like power, Mauer power. That's what that's what we got.
Power. Oh yeah. My God, that's perfect. Well, Aaron Mauer, AA Ron. I can't say that. I can't say that. Sorry. He's a STEM leader for MBA EA on a mission to bring wonder and play. Totally my jam. I'm loving this, man. Play back into the classroom, known as Coffee Hug in the education community. This lifelong learner with over 20 years of education experience thrives on sharing his craft in the world as a teacher, website creator, author, keynote speaker, podcast host, workshop designer, and professional development trainer. An avid fan of STEAM, CS makerspaces, purposeful play, and project-based learning, and of course, coffee. Who wouldn't love him? Green Screen Gal is fangirling. Oh my gosh. So we'll definitely have to connect with play. That's my theme. So how are you today? Good?
I'm doing great. It's Friday evening, and so it's exciting to know that people are still eager to do some learning after, it's May at the end of the school year, and whether you're watching live or in the recording, it's just exciting to know that we still have a little bit of brain power left to try to be a little bit better. It's exciting.
Yes, that's true. I still go to the 21st, so I got to keep going. So this
right.
is me. Yeah, where do you live?
I'm in Iowa, so
Oh,
right
nice.
out right on the Mississippi River, clear about as east as you can get in the
Very
state of
nice.
Iowa. Yep.
Excellent. No, Tony Vincent is, yeah, all
Yep.
out.
Yep.
Yeah, some good brains out there. All right, well, I'm gonna bring up your slides here and stop bragging about you and let you do your thing.
Awesome. Well, I
All right.
appreciate the intro. I appreciate the opportunity, and you know, however you're getting a hold of this presentation, I'm just excited and honored to have an opportunity to share some things that I'm passionate about. And I think for anybody in education, the system can be a grind. We know that. We're here to talk about AI, which is also exciting. But I want to start with this picture. This actually is what I just spent my last 8 hours, my full school day with, in a elementary school with 300 elementary students, working for a STEAM event where we designed and reiterated a Lego city. And you might be thinking, like, why are we talking about this right away from the start? Because as I was driving home to get ready for this presentation, it reminded me of really the key theme to this talk today, which is this concept that I've been kind of stewing on a lot as I am obsessed with AI. It is my dopamine hit. I do get excited about whatever the new innovations and updates and the constant things are. Like that does get me excited to think about all the things that come with that. But I work today with 300 kids that I've never met before and a passionate, educated staff. It reminds me of so many things that I hope that this presentation brings to you about caring about humans more than ever before. And that's not to say that AI is good or bad or indifferent. It's to say that I think it is a great opportunity for us to be reminded of what is important in life, personally, and professionally. And so as I got to work with these kids and see their excitement as they were building these cities, from kindergarten kids and then older kids coming through, I was reminded time and time again through the sessions that we want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want an opportunity to express ourselves and to create spaces where we can be vulnerable. And so that's where we're at today with this. And so this talk is how can AI serve humanity? And I don't know that I have these answers, but I'm gonna nerd out a little bit, and we're gonna kind of talk through some of this through the lens of Iron Man, if you can bear with me for a little bit. And my goal and the work that I do, and here's a little bit about me, and my introduction was already there. I currently support 21 school districts in STEM and computer science and social studies. And within that hat comes AI and authentic learning and PBL and things that I'm very passionate about. Purposeful play is like my jam. I've got a website. I've got a podcast where I try to find people. I often joke, right, that my podcast is an opportunity for free therapy or free professional development, which people who are like way braver and smarter than me. And so those are some things there that you're more than willing to check out if you'd like. But today in this evening, I'm inviting you to be curious. I mean, you're here on a Friday evening. If you're catching it live, huge props to you, virtual fist bumps that you have the cognitive capacity to even take in some learning. I want you to seek some synergy. This whole week has been absolutely phenomenal. I also say to share expertise. Even if you don't feel that you are an expert, nobody claims to be an expert. I don't think we can be an expert in AI, but you know what we are experts in? We're experts in what it takes to feel good about being a human and how we can help elevate our colleagues, ourselves, and our students in these spaces. And really, more important than ever in this time of all the rapid changes, heck, AI has changed like 15 times even in the course of the week of AI. I hope that I leave you with more questions than you arrived with, because it's hard to think about things if we don't push past our growth edges. So I've put together some resources. The access to the slide deck is at this Wakelet, or that scan that QR code. And I've also compiled a whole bunch of resources that we're not going to have time to explore, but as we work through some different pathways of thinking, I have compiled some resources for further learning, if you would like to explore that. So it's just the bit.ly week of AI human, if you would like. And so I know that'll get dropped and this will be recorded, so I won't spend forever on this slide. You'll be okay if you don't have it all like right in this moment, if you're checking it live too. But I just want to make sure that you have probably more resources than you need if you want to dive deep into this work. I am going to start with this, and in this Wakelet, and you can use any AI platform. And I know multitasking is not great, but hey, you know what? At the time of this recording, it is a Friday evening. And so if you need something to be dabbling with while you're taking in some thought, we've got this scenario for you. And we're going to come back to this. This is actually going to be something that we're going to bring back as a thought nugget later in the presentation. But the scenario is this. Sitting with a 7-year-old, which I actually did some of that today, but not about ChatGPT. We were building Lego cities. And I'm trying to help them create a coloring book page. And so my challenge for you in this, if you need something to multitask, if you've got several screens up, which I'm usually often guilty of, is I want to see if you can create a coloring book page for one of the seasons that you like. Maybe it's summer. I'm ready for summer, but some people are like winter and fall and all that good stuff. And if you're not sure what tool to use, there's been a lot of tools shared already, but in that Wakelet, there's actually a column of some platforms to use if you'd like to create a coloring book page. And if we have time, maybe we can share those out. But we're going to come back to this task. And if you don't want to, just keep it plugged in to the back of your mind as we get some learning. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this timeline, but I do think it's important that we remember how we have had to iterate time and time again. And AI is this space and time where we do have to iterate. We do have to think through some stuff. And I often joke that I think back in 2019, which is a long time ago, there was probably something that I was probably fired up about. There was probably something that I was triggered and sitting in at that point teacher lounge, probably complaining about something. I don't remember what it was, but I feel like I was kind of blissfully unaware of the educational apocalypse, as I like to, I guess now kind of call it. We had COVID hit. We don't need to go through all that again. But then we came back, right? Regardless of how your state or your community responded to COVID, we are now, for the most part, at a place where we've tried to figure out what to do with kids in our spaces again. And you know, kids can't just mute in live person. We have to figure out how to re-socialize. We had to figure out lesson plans. We had to figure out this engagement crisis that we're in right now. Chronic absenteeism. We've got some really pressing issues that I do believe were always there. I think after COVID, it became much more prevalent. And as we started to maybe kind of get the wheels back on the wagon and moving, man, bam, Silicon Valley just smacked us in the face with generative AI. And now we're having these questions, right? Like it's no longer, did you do your homework, but did AI do your homework? And so now we have to adjust and calibrate again. Regardless of change, there will be other things that happen in education, probably before I retire, that will not always be necessarily AI. But I love this thought prompt. And I think regardless of our stance on AI, regardless of our thinking on it, or maybe our district or our schools thinking on it, I really like this question. I think about almost on a daily basis, where let's just pause on the AI for a moment. But if we're age 5 or we're 15 or 25, I might be a few years older than 25 now. What are the human elements, right, that remain at the core of our learning environments, regardless of age or technology? I think about myself when I have to go into long meetings or my PD, and I can get upset with kids losing interest and focus, but I am just as bad. And so what are those elements? That's what I want us to get back to the core. And in some ways, that's what AI gets me so excited about, is that it is like this broken mirror complex where we are now faced with not emerging tech issues, even though there are a lot of that, but human issues, things that we have maybe kind of glossed over for the sake of like academic growth, that we forgot about the other elements. And by that, I mean, I'm talking about the system. I'm not saying that there aren't educators that do that on a day-to-day basis, or leaders, because I know they exist. But as a system, we were so focused on the academic side, we kind of forgot about the whole child. We forgot about our whole adults that are in charge of inspiring our students. And so what are those elements? I think about it for myself, much older. I'm not in a classroom, but what is it for me to be comfortable in a learning environment, to push my own growth edges? And I love this from Lonnie Berfquist, who is just someone that I admire so much. And she says the future education is not an AI, and it's also not a new methodology, but it's in redefining why we have school in the first place. I love this gentle reminder. We've been posed this question before. I think it's a really important time to come back to it. Why do we have school in the first place? And then do our actions and our routines match that purpose? I think that's just something very heartfelt, that's near dear to my heart and to a lot of our philosophies as we think about this work. In the beginning, my introduction talked about my podcast, which is Living on the Edge of Podcast. So I want to give credit to Justin because I had him on as a guest on episode 182. So by no means can I take any credit for this. But this framework, which is our Iron Man concept here, really, really has opened my eyes to think about things on a lot of levels as I'm working with schools and I'm working with educators, as I'm working with students about their needs and their interests. And he calls it the Iron Man assessment conundrum. And so I want you to take this opportunity to think about this. If Iron Man, and if you don't know who Iron Man is, the human inside is Tony Stark, and you don't need to be super nerdum like I am with Marvel and Cinematic Universe or the comics if you really want to get super deep into the nerd lore there. But if Iron Man was a student or an employee, because not all of you are educators, you might be administrators trying to handle this, how would you assess his abilities? How would you assess his performance? Would you assess Tony as the human? Would you assess Jarvis? Jarvis is the AI interface that Tony Stark interacts with when he's in the Iron Man suit to do all the really cool things that make Iron Man so awesome. Would you assess the suit and the technology? Would you assess the interactions between them? And we don't have time to discuss with your neighbors because you're probably obviously tuning in from home. So I want you to maybe self-reflect on that. And maybe there's a divide between what you would want to do and then maybe even thinking about what are you currently doing and how are we handling these situations? There's not a right answer to this, but it's about figuring out and rethinking how we align. What are our objectives? What are our goals? What is the purpose of school? And do the assessment and the things that we're doing match up to that? And so if we consider some things, okay, are you assessing the human only, just Tony? Are you assessing the AI? Are you assessing the interaction? Where is your focus? And some challenges come from that. This is where we are. We are in this crux right now of how do we handle these things, right? This kind of synergistic human AI performance assessment. What does that look like? How do we create? How do we know what kids actually know? And maybe more importantly, what is it do we even know that we think kids need to know? And so what does this look like? And then how do these questions challenge us in our conversations with professionals to figure out what it is we need to do moving forward with policy and position and actions? So if you say, hey, I'm going to assess the human, I'm only looking at Tony. And we've seen this. Eric just talked about it in the keynote. We've seen this where we have places that have banned all AI. We've banned the tools. I've seen places where they've gone back and everything is handwritten, right? We look at the human. A human can innovate. A human can experience emotions. We can adapt to situations. We do that on a daily basis if you are in any school in any shape or form. And we have an opportunity to make ethical decisions. But some things we can't always do. It's really hard for us sometimes to process a huge amount of data very quickly. We need rest, even if we think we can get by on coffee, and I'm guilty of that. And I joke in here, it's really hard to survive a missile strike, and I can't, as a human, shoot energy blasts from my palms. But despite some of those limitations, what are the qualities that contribute to his performance? It's important that there is a human element in all of this work. If we want to take a look at assessing the AI, and I'm assuming I've done this enough now, most people are not really interested in assessing the AI of any learning, but I think it's important to at least bring it into the fold because this is what we're dealing with. AI, right, can process lots of data. It can provide real-time feedback. Whether it's good or not, it can do it. Whether we agree with it or not, it can technically do it. And Jarvis, in this case, Jarvis can actually shoot energy blasts when integrated with the technology. But things that AI can't do, and I should probably put yet because there's always changes and updates, I know, but that emotion piece isn't there to understand ethical implications, because, who's putting that data together? AI by itself can't survive a missile strike. It does need technology, and maybe debatable. The innovator think creatively. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about algorithms. And so maybe our definitions of innovation and creativity, there's probably still some discourse on what that means. But my question with this is, without the human side, the personal motivation and goals, how actually can AI contribute to an outcome? And if we're not building awareness and building our own literacy as professionals, as leaders of lifelong learners, people outside of our control will create those outcomes for us. That's the part I don't like. And so then we have this symbiotic interface now, right? The human with the AI. And this is where I think we're trying to wrap our heads around. And there are so many incredible tools that can help us and tools that can help students. And there's lots of things out there. There's still no perfect solution. But together, it can enhance physical capabilities. We can, with technology, survive a missile strike. We could shoot energy blasts from our palms. We still need that conversation. And so what's that bridge look like of human intuition and AI efficiency? And that's what I want us to be kind of thinking about in the realm of education, coming back to this question. What is the purpose of formal education at scale? I think we need to come back to this conversation. We haven't had it. We kind of got smacked a little bit with COVID. We went straight to survival mode because that's what we had to do, literally. And we didn't have a whole lot of time to debrief because then we had to quickly switch back to all of a sudden now being face-to-face again. And we didn't have enough time to process some of the challenges of what worked and what didn't work when we had to move online and then come back face-to-face. More importantly, I think probably where a lot of the emotional flare-up has been, and the presentations I've done, the professional development, the work I do with districts that I support locally as well as nationally, is our assessments are being challenged. So it comes back to, like, why do we assess the way we do? And have we really taken a look at that? Can we come up with an answer to why we currently do what we do? And thinking about then one more layer to that, I'm not saying that the assessments we're doing are wrong. What I'm saying is assessments were designed around the emerging tech that at one point in time was a challenging part to our society and to our learning. And so those technologies have had limitations. Printed books had limitations. Pencils and pens, blackboards. I was just at a college that still was using chalk and blackboards. It's not wrong, but there's limitations to that. AI now is shifting the paradigm. What are the limitations of AI? But also, how does that also push the limitations to new opportunities? And these, again, I don't have answers to this. These are the questions that I'm hoping that your schools and your districts are starting to have formulate questions and thoughts and discussions around, because we do need to consider it. We're quickly moving to a place where AI is not going to be a website we ban or block. It's just going to be woven into everything. It's already in the fabric of living in so many cases. And we're getting more and more just streamlined in that. And so it's not about banning or blocking. It's what are we actually going to do? I also like to pose it in a positive thing, because so many times we can get caught in deficit mindset thinking about all the bad, all the fears, all the things. And those are very valid to process. But I also want us to think about the kids, the adults, the people in the world that AI could unlock stranded brilliance that was limited by the emerging technologies of past times, by the limitations of the traditional educational tools. And how can we help make sure that every kid coming through our systems have an opportunity to express that brilliance? So why are we talking about this? I've seen this already shared multiple times in several presentations, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But the skills are adapting. We've seen this shift of creative thinking, analytical thinking. AI and big data now is on this chart here for the World Economic Forum. I've seen in lots of job postings, AI just being part of the process. I've seen applications where they want you to do things that are not using AI and they ask for it. And so there's lots of spaces happening. Teach AI has also been referenced many times. This is something that's really important to me, is thinking about, in this day and age, how are we ensuring that all voices are heard and represented, and how are we bringing those spaces together to allow those voices to be heard. And I won't go on a hot take on this, but I definitely think we're missing still a lot of voices at the table, primarily even bringing student voices to the table, to this, and making those assumptions. And one of my big fears is this digital divide. We've seen it. COVID forced a lot of schools who weren't one-to-one to think about internet and homes and devices and try to bring some of that to the table. And now we've got AI, and I worry about the kids who don't have opportunities to learn and be aware of it. And where does that fit in with all the things that we're being asked to do? We're already being asked to do 20 hours of teaching and learning in an 8-hour day. So I know it's not easy, but it's something that we need to think about. How do we empower the parents? How do we empower the community? How do we empower our students? And to be quite honest, how do we empower our staff and our schools when there's already so much going on to even get to those next steps of conversations? And this is what I want. My fear is that if we're not careful and we use it for that low-hanging fruit of quick wins, which is important, we could quickly standardize education even further than what it is. I'm looking at it, how can we leverage these platforms, these tools, in ways in which we can amplify our wow factor, the wow factor of who you are as an educator or a school leader, the wow factor of our students. How do we bring this into the fold to get to the deeper levels of learning that we're after? And this is what I'm after. At the end of the day, it comes down to effective instructional practices. So we have the AI tools. And if we're worried about cheating, we're worried about plagiarism, we're worried about this, we're worried about that, my challenge, and I know it's not an easy challenge, is to start to think about what's our instructional practices. And if we have quality things happening in our learning space, in our learning environments, it shouldn't be as much of an issue as a lot of us are making it out to be. It doesn't mean that it's not an issue, because it is. But I think I challenge, when this gets brought up, what are we doing from how we deliver learning, our expectations with homework? Do we have check-ins? What are we doing to ensure that our instructional practices are strong? And have we given time for our staff, for ourselves, for our colleagues to have those skills in their toolbox to be truly effective? These are the things in their general. How do we create inquiry? I mean, I worked with Lego today all day long with kids, and I know that can't be Lego all day, every day, but I know the power of, we had 0 behavior issues, 8 hours in a cafeteria, no AC, 300 kids with a single challenge where they wanted you to get out of their way because they knew what they needed to do. We want kids to work together. They naturally did it. We want them to be creative and express it. They did it. So how do we create questions with spark? How do we sustain that inquiry? How are we purposefully creating hands-on, playful experiences? And then how are we putting these opportunities together for kids to share and communicate their work? And then what does that look like when the keys of the vehicle of driving, of learning, is in the hands of kids? And we can do that with young kids as young as kindergarten all the way through high school. So much of what we do is weaving a through line. I really, really believe in this passionately. And I know we've heard lots of things about silos, but how are we integrating and weaving, threading the needle of all the things that we want to do, where it doesn't feel like so much work, but as some phenomenal educators that I work with and some projects we do, we just call it, it's how we do work. And it's really hard for people to see it who don't understand how to experience it and witness what this looks like. So how do we take the learner profiles and standards or speaking and listening and writing, for example, and research and not teaching in segments, even though there might be a time and place where we need to do that, but move this to a space where it organically happens because the kids want to do the work because they're engaged in the work. And this is where I think AI is exciting to me because we're not ignoring standards, but we're looking at the depth of knowledge and how do we move through depth of knowledge levels 1 and 2. I don't want to say faster, but we don't have to spend as much time there now because of the limited technologies where we can get into depth of knowledge levels 3 and 4, which is where we all want to be, and start to leverage the Hess matrices. If you haven't seen that, these different types of ways of thinking to get to this deep learning. And I see AI as an opportunity to get to spend more time in this higher level learning than we normally have time for. That's the exciting piece for me, is to redesign our mode of operation, leverage these tools to get to the things that we all want to do as students and as educators. And so part of this is having some background knowledge, and you're here, you're a whole week of AI, and there's so many other things. This is one of my fears because I've seen this happen time and time again where we put in policies or we ban things. And my challenge is, have you used the tools? And most times the answer is no. And so if we lack the competence in AI literacy as professionals, then how is it that it's fair for us to rush to judgments about what's appropriate for AI usage? And so we have got to be engaged learners. We have got to get our hands dirty. We've got to get involved to see what it can do and what it can't do, and start to then have these conversations and questions. So at the beginning, I asked you to create a coloring book page, and maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But I want to come back to that because this is what I think is really important. I'm not going to go to this slide. If I'm in a classroom and I'm doing this activity, which I have done several times, these are kind of the things to think about. But as you were putting in your prompts, if you did it, you had to think about, okay, how am I going to tell the AI that I want a coloring book page? I need a coloring book page of winter in Iowa. And I might get, depending on the platform, a page that's full of color. Well, that's not a coloring book page. So I need to go back and I need to tell it that it needs to be black and white. And then maybe it's really off in terms of what winter looks like in Iowa. So I got to think about flora, and I got to think about fauna, and I got to think about weather phenomena. And when I do this, kids are like, what's flora? What's fauna? And I'm like, oh, that's such great questions. What do you think it is? So we can use these platforms to create visuals to get kids excited about things that maybe we need, that we can teach in science or in language arts. And have we thought about the ambiance? What do we want that to look like? What are the colors that maybe we would hope a person using our coloring book page would want to fill in? And how do we create that on the page? And so we're getting into all these spaces. And if we had more time, we would do small group activities and you can parent and talk. And there's some interactions there for you to think about. But what I want you to think about is this reflective discussion is, how did the activity demonstrate the idea that knowledge is a result of experience? It's really hard to put these things in if we don't have experience. It comes back to this human element. I live in Iowa, but some of you at the beginning, you said you're hello from England and hello from these other places. You may not know what winter looks like in Iowa. And I wouldn't pretend to know what winter looks like there either, because I don't have that experience. And so then how do we bring that into the classroom? So this comes back to tried and true research. And this is what gets me excited about this stuff, is not to shy away from AI. To me, as I'm thinking about Scarborough's reading rope, for example, it's so important that we can read and write. That's the baseline before we even get into like content specific reading and writing. Is we've got to have background knowledge, right? We've got to have the vocab for it. And we have to have language structure and verbal reasoning. And we have to know how to decode words, because if we don't have those skills, we can't even use it in the AI tools. So the exciting piece to me is this: the fear that all of a sudden kids no longer have to think or learn is not true. You actually need these skills even more to be better users of these platforms. This is the exciting thing to me. It further cements an opportunity for us to think about our structural moves and the research and the things that have been around for decades, to bring that back to the forefront more than ever before. And this can be true for anything. I've just picked out the reading rope here because I think about, as we think about how we want to rewrite and iterate our prompts, isn't that what we want kids to do? To write with expression, to have quality sentences, to not have simple paragraphs, and to be persuasive, and whatever your standard might be. And it's the age old time. And we have an opportunity now where we could leverage these AI tools to have those kids practice those skills. And here's like a follow-up idea. You could sit there and say, as kids are working in writing, I've seen this in younger ages where I may not give a first or second grader an AI account because of all the guidelines and rules and restrictions, which is really important. But Alana Winnick said this to me in a conversation as I was talking through this, like, what if we took their sentence and I, as the educator, put it up on the screen and we looked at the image that the AI tool created and we're like, is that what you wanted? Is that what you had in mind? And I've done this. I've practiced. The kid's like, no, it should be this and that. I'm like, okay, so how do you think we should rewrite that? Well, I think you should do this. And so what are we doing? We're draft. It's a rough draft. We're doing revision. We're doing the things that we know are important. But now we could do visual cues, for example, to spark new thoughts and to have classroom engagement and to have class conversation or small group conversation. And all of a sudden the kids are like, well, what if you had this? And what do you had that? Like, I don't know. What do you think? We're back to inquiry. We're back to wonder. We're back to thinking deeply about, at the end of the day, prompts. But it ties back to the things we're trying to get kids to be excited about learning again and to bring that out of them, and do things different. And there's so many great activities that are out there. I have this linked all in the Wakelet, but there's a Pictionary and there's plenty of these out there where you see an image and what do you think the prompt was to create that image? And could we write a prompt to get that same image? And so now we're messing around with wordplay. And so what we're doing is we're building background knowledge. These things aren't going away, I guess is my point. We need it more than ever. And so this is something that's really important that we think about learning. And as we do this, there's a fantastic article from a couple of months ago from a student that was a junior. And I just think it's really interesting. I underlined one passage of his article and some key bullets here, but he talks about in this article, he says, teachers assign us work that relies on rote memorization and then tells us not to use artificial intelligence. So are we taking advantage of the opportunities that we have with kids? And then I would further challenge this kind of double standard. I know this is actually, I should put an asterisk to this, that this is part of the learning journey. So I know that as we're trying to navigate these spaces, this could happen, but we've got people upset that kids could use AI to write essays, but yet we're the ones using AI to write the essay prompts. How do we manage that? I'm not finger pointing. Again, I don't have answers. What I'm saying here is, are we creating spaces in our professional time with our colleagues, with their departments, to have these conversations about what are we going to do? Because I have ran and operated many PDs where teachers are like, this is great. I use AI to create rubrics and essays and lessons, and I refuse to let my kids use any. I will fail them if they do it. I'm like, well, why is that? Why are you excited and then not excited? How do we start to work through that messiness? It's a friction. It's natural. It's human as we start to figure out change and shifting of our routine. So again, it's not a finger pointing, but it's like, are we creating spaces so we can have dialogue around this? Because sometimes I think we don't even realize our operations until we have time to kind of think through that. And I believe that needs to be built into our workday. It shouldn't be things that we need to do on our own time, because that own time is for you. I want to phrase this way. Not thinking about AI as a cheating problem, but instead thinking about technology capable of bypassing human cognition. And what does that mean for us? And how do we lean into that? And what's right and what's wrong? We've seen lots of historical shifts. All these things that are right here. And I won't spend forever on this because some of these, maybe you agree or disagree, but we've been through this. I remember going to the library in a card catalog and checking out an encyclopedia, letter M on my topic, and figuring out, well, how do I rewrite one or two sentences in my own words to not get caught for cheating, but still take everything that was in the encyclopedia? It's the same thinking that kids are doing. Obviously, AI does a whole lot more than that, but it's not the difference in inspiration. It's the path of least resistance. My daughter has used AI, and I don't always agree with how she does it, but she said something really powerful to me. And she's like, if the teacher doesn't care, why should I? And that really, really hit me. You assign an essay, because I asked her, I was like, I don't like that how you've gone about using AI, but I want to talk about this. I'm like, what was the process? There wasn't a check-in. There wasn't Socratic seminar. There wasn't small group discussion. There wasn't one-on-one consultation. There was no draft to be turned in. And I know that's not everybody, but if you feel that it doesn't matter, that there's no point, sometimes it's very easy to be like water, the path of least resistance. And so it's not about cheating because kids are lazy, because they know you don't care. And to me, that's the human pedagogy piece. That's what is it we're doing that kids, I want kids today. I felt it. I had goosebumps. Kids were like grabbing my arm. They're like, you need to see my build. And I was like, okay, but there's 300 of you. I can only clone myself one time. It's me. And I was just like, this is the urgency. And you can't have that every day. But what are we doing with what we can to bring this piece back? To me, this is a really important element. It's coming back to the human side. As we think about leveraging AI, it's more about our connections and our relations. What are those performance tasks? What are the things that we can do more open-ended with no right answers to hear their pieces? And there's some examples in here and some links that you can check out in the slide deck. And I think about these, right? These things are not new. Like we've done stuff, defensive learning and designing games. And this is project-based learning, or I call it hyphenated teaching. Because I think it's important that we also bring exposure to kids that if you use AI, whether it's acceptable or not within the context of the classroom, they need to know that it's not an authority. This is a prompt I love to use with kids and with teachers. The prompt is right here. And I put it in. This is an example of the latest images that I got when I put it in this prompt here of an illustrated poster to help children learn which sounds common animals make. A cat doesn't go dog or woof, right? That duck up in the right-hand corner is saying moo. It's not an authority. It's not perfect. It's constantly getting better. At some point, maybe this will actually truly work. But this is important for them to see. And something that I think is really valuable as we're trying to help adults and students with this work, visuals are key. I can get a whole bunch of text, and it's much easier for me to assume that the text is quote unquote right. But when I look at this, I can be like, oh my. So how do we continue to bring some awareness to this as we go through? And I think this bias and accuracy conversation has been brought up in lots of presentations. This is important too. And I was just prepping. This is just May 14th here when I just checked this leaderboard for bias and accuracy compared to like March 5th when the last time I ran it. And I put the link so you can check this out of the hallucination rate and factual rate. This is just a matter of a few months of the difference in not only the accuracy rate increasing, but the different tools that are now available. I mean, just this week, GPT 4.0 came out, and that wasn't even in March. And so I also think we need to have conversations not about bias and misconceptions of the AI tools themselves, but if I went to Aaron Mauer's training in March and I shared this, that's no longer, and that's what you're having conversations around with people still. If you were taking that knowledge I shared, it's no longer accurate when I look at May. Like things have changed, things have shifted. Like Snowflake Arctic wasn't even on the list in March. So I also think it's important that we have to be lifelong learners. Now, I don't know how that time comes in. I mean, that's a whole nother probably hot take for another day, but like it's moving so fast too that who are your people that can sift through that to help staff and parents and community be aware of the quickly changing landscape of all this. And this work here, it moves into this conversation. This is our digital citizenship. Can be found in our social studies standards, our language arts standards, our science standards. We look for cause and effect and claims and what's accurate and what's not and citing evidence. We can get into all these things that are so important. My youngest daughter was just sharing something that she saw on TikTok, and I was like, that's actually not true. It's not. But she's like, but it's trending. Like in her mind, it's true. And she believes it because it's TikTok, right? And so how do I help her even outside of an education context, understand this information, misinformation, disinformation, malformation. That was new to me. That was a word I didn't even know was a word to about 2 months ago. The idea of using accurate information to make you think false things. I'm like, oh, like that's everywhere. Hence TikTok. And so it's just thinking through, we have an obligation to ourselves, and it aligns to a lot of the standards. It doesn't have to be an AI unit. These things happen in social media with or without AI. These things happen in books we read, if people even actually read those things anymore. These things are everywhere. And so how are we helping people realize how to disseminate fact from fiction? And it's getting harder and harder by the minute. So I just think these are just some things, again, how are we having these conversations? And are we even aware of it to even know how to go about having the conversations? So this piece too, I think, is important. As we're excited about AI, we're excited about tools, we're excited about these pieces, to also remember that student work is their intellectual property. Have we provided and obtained consent to put their work into these platforms if we're using it to grade, if we're using it to get feedback, if we're using it for whatever your rhyme or reason might be? I know for me, and maybe for you, you have created stuff that maybe you wouldn't like everybody to have access to. Maybe you don't care. And I used to say this idea around privacy, which we're not going to get into tonight, but I have a fantastic podcast conversation that shifted my brain, because on the show it was with a person that works with in the privacy sector for global banking. I was like, well, I just don't care, like around like if Alexa knows all the things. And she was like, that is like the very problem, like that is the biggest problem of all. And so it's just thinking through some of these things of, our kids, their ideas are their ideas. And is it all right to feed that into the big data machines? And sometimes we think we're doing it because we have good intentions. So it's just another thing to think about that has come up through the last year and a half of trying to help our local schools navigate these spaces. And all these topics that have come up because of AI. Yes, they're come up because of AI, but these are human issues. We could take AI out of the conversation. These things still matter. We put AI in the conversation. These things still matter, and they matter more than ever before. And so I think it's really important. If any of you have a LinkedIn profile, here's what I was told on my podcast with my friend that is in privacy. If you're in LinkedIn, download and request your data. And when you get that, look at how they have sorted and identified you. It is shocking. It is crazy. One, I didn't know how to read it at first, so I had to get some help. Once I did, how you are categorized. And it's not the way I see myself. And so, but it's all based on things that I have put into conversations and into dialogue and who I'm connected with. These are things like, do we even know how we're being processed? So these, again, just really important things for us as the adults to have conversations around, so that we can figure out then what that means for our kindergarten kids, our high school kids, our kids that are on the phones, and everything else that goes on in the world. And as we have a few minutes here, this is one of the problems that I think we have. Going back to this, what is the purpose of education? We have spent so much time training our professionals, our educators, our instructional coaches, our administrators, our college prep programs on how to solve known problems. We have not spent proper time imagining or learning how to identify new problems. We're really good at creating scenarios where we can work on solutions, but we haven't created enough opportunities to think through, how do we help our students learn how to identify problems besides handing the problem to them? And this, to me, I think is crucial. And so it comes to this, as you're reframing a thinking, is this: how do we transform in this age of AI, in this kind of panic mode that we've been in for a better part of a year and a half of this? I call it the age of available answers. And we rethink it to now we need to be to this age of articulate asking. Is this information right? How do I know it's accurate? How do I know that I'm not the product? How do I ask a follow-up question to this? How do I challenge what's being presented to me? And how do we handle that? How do we know the words to know how to ask the questions? Questions are the key. So I think it's a combo. You've seen this. Eric's keynote was absolutely spot on. It's way better phrase than what I have here. We have to embrace AI to some degree. It is the new path forward, but it's not making AI the autopilot. It's making it part of the co-pilot. How do we work together? And so in closing, these last couple of minutes, I believe this is my philosophy of many things as I hands-on learning and purposeful play and authentic learning and project-based learning, process over product. I can have a kid that have a final product that doesn't look good at all, but the learning journey could give me goosebumps hearing it. I could have other kids that have a beautiful final product and didn't learn anything. And so how are we focusing more on process? It's not easy. And this requires some huge shifts and supports. This is system approach. And I know we have pockets of this, but I know it's also really hard to do is standardized curriculum and standardized tests really kind of tie our hands back. But how do we play in the space between the notes? Because that's when music is made. Music is not the notes, it's the space in between. And so how do we kind of play in the spaces that we do have? I call it hyphenated teaching. Not all of you might be a fan of project-based learning, but inquiry-based, challenge-based, problem-based, challenge-based, community science. Like there's so many things out here. The goal is how do we explore phenomena? How do we spark curiosity and then pursue that and see where it takes us? And what if instead of teaching our students to answer questions, going back to our reframing slide earlier, we teach them how to question answers? And I'm going to end with this for the sake of time, because maybe there were some things in the comments that I overlooked and maybe not. I use this quote in everything I do because I believe this is the key to so much. And this comes from Papert. Seymour Papert said, "The scandal of education that every time you teach something, you deprive a child of the pleasure and benefit of discovery." I think you need that. I think our students need that. And even if we know it, how do we allow them that excitement when we discover something new, where you just want to grab someone by the arm and be like, I have to show you what I found? That is the key to the excitement of this. I'm going to skip through my really nerdy magic trick because it's really bad and for the sake of time, but I want to get to this last slide. While AI can be predictive, we are human and we have incredible opportunities to explore what it means to be human. And I love this quote from Dwayne Matthews, another phenomenal voice in the field of education. The future of education is human-led, it's purpose-driven, and technology augmented. And I don't think I could say it any better than that. So I appreciate all that you guys do, taking time to learn, whether you're watching live or the recording, and pushing your growth edges. I can't thank you enough for the opportunity to share. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. I would highly encourage most of you, if you want to learn more, coffeeforthebrain.com is my website. More importantly, the podcast, not because it's my podcast, but because the luck I have had to speak with people who are so insightful that every time I have a conversation, I feel like I have so much to learn. And that's what I want all of us to walk away with, that excitement to be like, oh, I've got something new to learn today. That's a good feeling. And so I appreciate the time and opportunity, everybody. Thank you.
Okay. So you're just as cool as I thought you would be. Unbelievable. I mean, we have obviously comments in here, lots of hands clapping, great message. Critical thinking is the most important skill for the future. More hand clapping, and then a bunch of me. We had someone from California, England, and St. Croix.
Oh, wonderful.
No, I was saying that you have so many wonderful sayings or even quotes that you brought up. You need a t-shirt company. No, No, it was heartfelt. Like you had me well up at one point. It's excellent.
Good.
I love music. Is
Yeah.
not the notes, but the space in between. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's so deep.
Yeah. I know. Right. Right.
It's so good. It's so good. But all of this, I really like that you said something about the engagement crisis, because I always feel like I teach middle school, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? I'm
Oh.
teaching Zach King tricks today. We're jumping out of the window.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, I'm not pretending that it is easy, because it's not, but I hope that AI is allowing the space for us to get back to these conversations that we haven't had, because of all the things that education brings. And then to me, it's how do we get back to that core feeling, right? How do we get back to the human element? And that's what I am optimistic with that space of.
Me too.
Let's start there.
Yeah.
And then figure out how AI fits to
Exactly.
to strengthen those elements. And
Exactly.
so,
And you nailed it too with the whole COVID thing, that we never took the time to reflect.
right.
And we do that as humans. We keep moving and moving and moving and moving. And it's all about even just stopping for gratitude and just breathing. That's why I'm so into teaching. As hyper as I am one of these people that teaches people how to breathe and be in the present moment.
Mm, yes.
Stop and use your 5 senses and just take it in
Right.
and reflect.
Yes.
Because otherwise we just keep doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that reflection piece is vital. I mean, and if we feel pressed, we don't have enough time for it, but that's actually, I think, where a lot of the learning gets
Have more
cemented.
time if you do it.
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, there's always time is
Yeah.
always the $1 million question, but that intentionality to like, why are we designing how we're designing? And then how do we let go of some of those things that maybe we don't need anymore to allow those spaces to now be had? I think
Yes.
we have an opportunity right now to rethink some of that.
We absolutely do. And this is going to be a very well watched one for the replay for sure. I'm going to make sure of that.
Well,
feel
thank
like
you.
it could have been more towards the beginning, just because this is something that we really have to pull out our hearts here and do some reflection. And
Right.
I loved it. It was so great. You were wonderful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm a little upset with you that you didn't do your magic trick. You have as much you can do.
I know. I should have, but
I was like,
you
no.
know, yeah,
It's all
You
right.
can-
Yeah, no, time is hard on lives and whatever. But
it is.
yeah, but you'll have to share that somewhere. But
I
so
will.
just
It's a good one.
I know. Now pull your slides back. Oh, I have to go. But a couple little closing things is that we would like you to remember that tomorrow we have a bunch of workshops, and on the website you can see here. Oh, I didn't want to pull it up during your thing and like take over your beautiful slides. Okay, hold on one second. See who's not prepared. My thinking out loud has gotten bad because it's been a very long week. There we go. Okay, so on the website, if you look up here, you'll see Saturday workshops, and we have the amazing Eric Kurtz and Michael Hernandez and Mary and Breton. I don't know if I say his name right. I'm sorry, Amanda and myself and the Edu Guardians. We're all doing these workshops that go dive deep, so you'll walk away with a product probably. So it'll be a lot of fun. That's a separate sign up. And don't forget about karaoke that's happening tonight. It will not be recorded. You have to sign up on the website separately. And don't forget to join our map too. Week of AI map, bit.ly/week of AI map. But thank you so much, Mr. Power.
I like it. There you go.
I'm so grateful for you and grateful for your message and to meet you, and look forward to learning more from you because you're a great voice.
Well, thank you.
So everybody, are you ready for the prizes and party? Because I think us hosts are. I think we're all. I'm like, Amanda, can we do 4 days next week?
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I'm the oldest one of the crew, so I'm like, I need to take a nap. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we will see you in the other stream. Bye for now.
Thank you.